Live and direct, live and I take no jive.
Legalize it.
So how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Hi, welcome back. It's another episode of the Karma Koala podcast. And it's hemp conversations all week this week. This time I'm in Montana. I mistakenly thought Ken was in Canada when I was emailing him earlier in the week. But he's in an equally beautiful part of the world up there in Montana. And he runs a company called IND Hemp. And we're just going to chat about what his company does. It works globally. And in the preamble, we were just quickly chatting about how hemp is very good at sort of global connections and community. And I just want to get into that and then maybe talk more about, after we talked about his business a bit, what he thinks about hemp regulation for the type of work that he does compared to how people perceive hemp in the US. So, I think that's a really important conversation at the moment. And industrial hemp and hemp for useful things like building houses or creating bioplastics or all the stuff that we really need rather than shoving it down our throats. So I'm really interested to speak to Ken about this. Ken, welcome to the show. And you're an Elliott as well. My ex is an Elliott, so a double L, double T. Never dare get that wrong, otherwise you're in trouble.
Well, John, good morning, man. Good morning here. Good evening there, man. Thanks for making this happen. We enjoy catching up with folks all around the world. And I listened to a podcast you had with Joe Hickey.
Yeah.
And Joe's a good friend of ours. You know, Joe is part of the lifeblood, the old guys here in our industry, and he's been doing this a long time. Our company, IND Hemp, and IND stands for industrial. You know, when we got going, there was THC hemp, there was CBD hemp. Well, we're the IND hemp. We do industrial. We do it for grain. We do it for fiber. You know, we're into, every time we look at hemp a different way, we see opportunity. And we work with folks all over the world. And it's just amazing the people we get to work with. You and I were talking about the amazing, smart people you've talked to.
Amazingly smart people. And in every jurisdiction on the planet, they seem to be moving towards, in agriculture, really thinking about hemp, but from a repeating an environmental resourced approach to agriculture and the world in general, which I always imagined that's what the conversation about hemp would be until brightly colored packages started appearing all over US gas stations.
And that's unfortunate. And I think, I spoke with somebody who in Washington late last night, Jeff Whaling. He's part of the National Hemp Association.
Yeah. And
he had dinner with a bunch of legislators. In fact, he was sitting down at a Trump meeting. And so we've got awesome people working all around the world doing these things. And then the gas station thing came up, right? And it's just a huge distraction because our legislators, I'm not sure about legislators everywhere, but they are not necessarily the smartest people.
Yeah, well, they're not the smartest, people, and they're not educated. They're not educated on the topic, and they only want to give 30 seconds to thinking about it, don't they? Yeah.
I think our legislators like to listen to their lobbyists, and a lot of people think that their legislators are bought and paid for by the lobbyists, and there's a strong argument for that. And that's kind of where we are today. You know, we've got poor farming practices that impact our environment. We've got poor food systems set up that are making us sick, and our government is challenged, as most people know. So anyway,
but that's interesting. But on that side of things, before we get into some of the practicalities of your businesses, your new health secretary, although a little bit zingy and zany, I mean, he's having a conversation about healthier food systems. What does he? I can't quite understand what he means by it. Is it what you and I would think in terms of changing the way that the US feeds itself and the way that it does agriculture, or is it just another sort of smoke screen? I can't work him out at.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to like the guy because he's bringing this to the forefront. Speaks to it from Washington. The news people either savage him or applaud him. But the fact that he's speaking about our farming programs and our food programs, I mean, all you got to do is take a look at our people. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we didn't have a lot of large people wandering around, right? And then our farming practices changed. We were allowed to spray certain chemicals on our food. Glyphosate is the one that comes to mind, Roundup, and as a consequence, I think our health system is broke down. And I like it because he's bringing.
Well, that's right. He's bringing these subjects to the fore, but
yeah.
And he does talk about it the whole time, and sometimes he does go a bit left to center. But
Yeah.
I'm interested to know: do you think what has he achieved in that so far, other than the conversation?
Well, he's part of the conversation. This was never part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, and like hemp, hemp was never part of the conversation, or the right conversations anyway. So anyway, if we look at this from a long-term perspective, hemp or health or changing farming practices, we like to look at things in days and weeks and months, and this will quite honestly will be years, but we got to start someplace, and he started.
Yeah.
And so he's bringing things to the attention of folks that we shouldn't be spraying our food with something that is designed to kill everything, right? And I think we're seeing the repercussions of that. Our health is just deteriorating to the point where, gosh, we're in trouble.
So I mean, interesting. In your part of the world, do people think about agriculture and their health? I lived in Oregon for a while, and so people did there. I mean, obviously, there's still all the standard stuff, but there was a lot more education and people. But are the pockets in the US in various states getting bigger? And does this conversation about health and agriculture permeate through most of society, or is it still a sort of middle class and up, so to speak?
The farming practices are contributing to their health issues. More and more people are seeing that. I mean, we've got a lot of autistic kids, ADD, ADHD. We've got Parkinson's and Alzheimer's at record numbers. And so people are smart enough to recognize something's going on.
So do you think that there's, because he's talking about it and there's thinking about it, is hemp one of the leaders of change because it's outside the existing corporate agricultural environment?
Yeah, I think hemp can play a big role in it. In the United States, we grew 95 million acres of corn last year, for example, and another 85 million acres of soybeans. Now, corn and soybeans, people do not eat corn and soybeans. That's cattle feed. That's ethanol. There's a lot of things, but it's not food. And we spray, nearly 170 million acres with pesticides, glyphosates, or the like. And no farmer's making money on corn and soybeans or wheat and barley or cotton. It's just the farming industry is struggling. So I think hemp can provide an alternative. I think we can show farmers a way that they can make money and afford to keep their homes and ranches.
How do you operate your business? Because I was reading your LinkedIn. So I mean, you have a family farm, but you also contract out your work to other farmers in the state and in other states as well.
Yeah, we arguably have the largest hemp facility in the United States. We've been doing this. We've been in the hemp industry since 2012, before you could be in the hemp industry. And so we started off small as a hemp grain processing facility in central Montana. And then that grew into a fiber processing facility. So, we process grain and fiber. and then I started off. I got the first license in the state of Montana to raise hemp, and then we work with local farmers, and they grow for us, and we process their stuff. And then we work in other states to help bring hemp production processing to those states. And then we work with like the National Hemp Association, working on legislation. We work with the Hemp Feed Coalition to create feed opportunities for our hemp farmers. And we're working with end users who are developing products based on what we can provide them, either as a fiber per herd for food. And then we get to work all over the world. We were in Africa a couple times last year. We think that hemp can play a part in trying to mitigate malaria. It's a huge problem in Africa that most Americans know very little about. We think the biochar opportunity for hemp is huge because of the amount of biomass hemp can provide on an annual basis. You don't have to cut forests down to get your biomass. You can grow it every year, and so we think there's a lot of neat opportunities. We think it does some great things for your soil health, being putting carbon back into the soil, and you don't need to use.
Do you think that's a major education point in the US, because the soils must be getting pretty degraded by now? And I mean, what other methodologies do people use in the US to improve their soil quality? Isn't hemp one of the more obvious and cheaper options to do that?
Yeah, you would think so. But what everybody generally uses is synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, right? And that's we're addicted to synthetic fertilizers and pesticides.
Well, I mean,
and
but the
and
politics
that's
at the moment may force you. I mean, this is the funny thing about the politics at the moment. Yet again, it's forcing everybody to think about oil-based products, but also most of the world's fertilizer is coming out of the Middle East. So pretty soon, people are going to have to start. Obviously, the switch is too big, too quick, but I presume it gives an window of opportunity for people to listen to new ideas.
I think so. Yeah, we hope so. But most farmers don't listen to hemp folks. They listen to their agrochemical suppliers. They listen to their bankers who say, you're going to grow wheat and barley in Montana because that's what we do in Montana. And we'll give you an operating loan so that you can buy these chemicals from your ag chemical company. And that's how we've been doing it. And that's where our farmers are. It's
well, it's the same. I grew up in rural UK, and our big local farmer is, I think they're just changing now, but my mother's lived in the same place for 55, 60 years, and the local family were, that's wherever you are on the planet, except for maybe France, they seem to be drawn into that, and they don't know a way out of it. And it's really hard to diversify, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, you take a look at how many farms have gone bankrupt, the number of farmers in the United States. If you look at the soil condition, you look at this goes back to our farming practices and our health, our food systems. It's all broken, and so we need to change it, right? Our farmers are not in a position to bring change. They put their butts in their tractor every day to go to work and try to survive and make a living, right? They don't have time to go out and investigate this hemp thing. And that's what we do. We try, we have a lot of smart people working at our company. If you met the people in our company and then you met me, you'd wonder why I'm in the same room. There's brilliant people working for us. There's brilliant people. We get to meet people like, Craig Carr over in New Zealand, right? That dude and his company they're awesome, and then you watch the, oh gosh, there's people in Australia doing
those Western
things.
Australians, and they're growing. I mean, they're really ahead of the game, aren't they? But
they're amazing.
They're held back by their not so much by their state government, but by federal government in Australia. They don't seem to be able to punch their way out into the rest of the country, as far as I can work out. Which I don't understand why. I mean, again, look, you and I know that farming is a conservative business, and once they're tied into that, Australia isn't that different from the US, except it tries not to pump so much rubbish into its soil, and it has to be a bit more careful because we are essentially a desert. So, but at the same time, it is amazing the changes that those farmers in Australia have made over the last 20 years, isn't it?
It is, and you take a look at a company like the Margaret River Hemp Company. I follow those guys, and it's not, they do amazing things. A lot of amazing people and companies in this space, and kind of things you're trying to do is bring people together to collaborate. We're stronger in the U.S. if we've got a partner like Carfield's in New Zealand. We're working with people in Vietnam. There's people in the UK. There's people in Africa and South America, and we've been to all these places this last year, and so it's hemp is happening.
It's a DIY. You have to do it yourself because the government aren't interested. They're not going to give you subsidies. They're not going to help you.
No,
it's almost as though they have to see that there's a global network happening without them in order to make them sit up and pay attention.
I think so. And from our standpoint, we're one of the reasons we're international and working with people all over the world is, our government is highly influenced by lobbyists for the corn and soybean and so they're motivated by the people who make sure they get elected every year, right?
Yeah.
And that's that. I don't know what you call that, greed maybe, but that's what motivates them, and that's what will motivate change in legislation. And we've been working on legislative change, and I think we're getting there. But it's hard when you're on the front end of this hemp industry looking for legislative change and changing the narrative on what hemp is when there's nobody in Washington necessarily interested in working with you. And they're all busy in Washington, right? They're busy. It's not, they're not, their biggest concern is not Ken Elliott and IND Hemp in central Montana.
Exactly. Well, they make themselves busy because they're one of their main things is they should be thinking about Ken Elliott and IND Hemp in Montana because they might find it makes them, well, they want to be busy the whole time, but they might find that it actually improves their lives and other people's lives, which is, you imagine that's what elected representatives are meant to do. It is hard to imagine in this day and age, that's a fact. But you'd hope somewhere in the back of their brain still that's really how they think, whatever side of politics they sit on.
Yeah. And if you go to our website, and Sean, and it speaks to, we're just a family. We're a faith-based family going out there doing every day what we do. We keep our head down and we try to perfect what we do, and we can't change everything. But we're working with a lot of people who are approaching this from a different perspective all over the world. And if at IND Hemp, if we can just keep our heads down and focus on being better today, better than we were yesterday, and tomorrow we've got great things on the horizon, I think that is our best plan. And we work, like I said, we work with the National Hemp Association, and Jeff Whaling is doing a great job on legislative matters. And there's other organizations, NIC and others in the United States that are trying to bring about change, but people all over the world, like yourself, trying to bring change. From a grassroots perspective, and that's probably better than having a large multinational corporation only interested in making money for their shareholders.
I think it brings the right people who are coming with the right reasons to make, if not always the right changes, at least with a good heart in mind to make those changes. Look, I've got a question about, you mentioned it earlier, processing. Every conversation I have about industrial hemp in the US, they say one of the main problems is when I was speaking to Joseph down in Kentucky, for example, is the investment in processing is so minimal, it doesn't allow the farmers, the agricultural sector, to really put their investment into growing larger crops because processing is so hard. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think is happening?
Yeah, well, I can speak from the United States perspective. We haven't been processing hemp for a long time, and there was no technology available for us in the United States. And when we got into looking at processing fiber, there's grain processing, facilities available, and that was easy. And I'd recommend more people do that. But on the fiber end of things, it's been a journey for us and very, very, very expensive. And most people cannot do that. Our family has got a different financial situation, and we've been able to weather the storms as far as the costs. And there's just not equipment out there. So we've gone over to Europe, and we've acquired some hemp processing equipment, that a line called the Low Roche line, and there's some other good processing lines, but it's not readily available, and it's very expensive. You know, millions, if not tens of millions of dollars to get started up. That's not an easy lift for most people in agriculture, especially if you can just grow corn and soybeans, wheat and barley and cotton like we've been doing forever.
Price, yeah. Mentioning Europe, which countries do you think are doing a good job in Europe at the moment? I keep hearing about the Italians and what they're doing, but I don't really have much of a sense of what the size of their hemp industry is and what they create from what they grow.
Yeah, you know, I think from our perspective anyway, you know, some of the folks in France are and Belgium and they are leaders.
Yeah.
Been leaders, people we want to emulate and associate with. They're just, you know a leader when you see them, and they are. And I love what the Italians are doing with food and with their seed. And then there's, you know, in the UK, they're awesome. You know, I'm going to be speaking at a conference in Poland later this summer, and they're doing some great things. And most of it's grassroots. And this goes back to, you know, if we wanted large agri companies to run this thing, I don't think we'd be any better off than we are today. So grassroots is probably where we need to be. Like I said, we're a company, a family of faith, and if that's where it is, that's where it is. God's got a plan for this. Let's go back to work and just keep getting better, right? But I think that mentality is happening all over the world, and it's a slow process, but it's probably a better process.
Look, I totally agree. And you know, in our preamble, I said I was talking to India this morning, and you know, the guy I was talking to there, and last week I was talking to a guy in Nepal as well, and you know, they came to it in the same way that you did, but the desire to garner knowledge and put it into action and create community-based approach to production, and also community-based approach to create, you know, making sure that you have good logistics so you can get the people who want to make products, you know, from the hemp. It seems to be happening. There seems to be an energy over the last 18 months or 2 years that I sort of, maybe I just wasn't aware, but I just see this growth and people just popping up everywhere who've quietly been working away for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And suddenly there's this moment that it's almost like it seems to be happening underneath all that shouting of the hemp for human consumption approach to hemp.
Yeah. You know, the Chinese have done done a lot, and we're working with some people in China. But one of the things, and one of the great hopes I see for hemp is that, you know, the younger generation who are, and we see them all the time, love speaking at colleges and with young people. You know, they look at their future, they look how they grew up and what their parents did, and I don't think they want what we had. It's like all we got up and did every day was go to work to make money, and they see a bigger purpose in their life. And I'm very hopeful that the younger generation steps up here.
No, I think they're fantastic across the board. I don't know why people complain. You know, they complain about, what are they, Gen Z or something? I never remember.
Yeah.
But I think they're an amazing generation because they really have seen. You know, we might not have destroyed everything, but we were rather lazy about changing things. And but at the same time, they don't have to like attack it like it's some Herculean task that it has to kill you in the process of doing it. They seem to be quite, you know, balanced in the way that they want to approach it and argue for change. And, you know, and a lot of it has got to do with the first thing is respecting one another. which seems to me a pretty obvious way to start a conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing is, the young people have a vested interest in the future, right?
Yeah.
The reality is, as dinosaurs that are here now will go the way of the asteroid eventually. And when that happens, they're in the queue, they step up. They've seen, the problems that we've created, both with our environment or anywhere you look, we've got some issues, right? And they're in the queue, like it or not. You either start swimming or you're sinking, and we got a lot of good swimmers. And so, very hopeful. My daughter runs our company. My wife Julie and I, and my daughter are the ones that run our company. My daughter is in her 30s. We've got our chief executive officer Trey Riddle and Eric Ernest, who's my chief operating officer, and Jim Sinus, who's our HR guy. And we have got brilliant people who are younger than I am, which is great. And that's where the future belongs. And so, when you
And
do
you find these people are coming to you from other parts of the US and searching you out? I'm interested to know whether, not so much like it's an exodus from the cities, but
Yeah.
there are people searching out for this, but they're not they're not going to go and sit in the corner of a field in a yurt. They actually want to do something and understand that they have to operate in a reality that might not suit them perfectly, but to get to the reality they want, they have to work within it.
Yeah, and Montana. I'm not sure how much time you spent in Montana, but it's a very unique place to live and awesome. And people who come here to Montana have a lifestyle that's more outdoors, right?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about Joe Hickey, and Joe. We're trying to figure out how we can get a hemp company going in Kentucky, because there are plenty of brilliant people, young people in Kentucky, but their home is Kentucky. So we're trying to figure out how we can bring this lifestyle and this mentality to Kentucky or to New York or to North Carolina, Arizona, to New Zealand, parts of the world, Africa, South America. It's a lifestyle change. You got to change people's hearts. If we're going to change anything, we got to change their hearts, right? It ain't about changing the crops. And I think hemp can change their hearts. And the young people in Kentucky or Malaysia, or Indonesia, or wherever we are in the world, they want change. They got to have change because it doesn't look promising out there. So anyway, we tried. That's why we're on the road a lot and speaking with people, because I think there's a desire for change, and most people don't even know what hemp is and the opportunities with respect to what hemp can provide. And so I get a charge out of.
No, well, you're on a teaching mission, and it's one of the better missions on the planet at the moment. So, I'm with you 100%, as they like to say in South Africa. It's definitely the way of the future, and I'm really glad that hemp is beginning to sort of appear in the consciousness, and we can get past the sort of cannabis conversation, which is basically based around sort of personal desires, the way that it's been framed over the last 10 years. And in a sense, there's nothing particularly wrong with that. But I think the young have worked out we need to move on pretty quickly. We've got past the thing is you can go to a shop and buy some cannabis and go home and get stoned or whatever it is. But it's a bigger story than that, isn't it? And it's about change, and it's about community.
Yeah, the hemp is a food, for example. If I could, suggest people grow more food, in Africa, for example. And we've spent time in South Africa, love South Africa, right? But we like Ghana and Nigeria and Uganda and, sub-Saharan Africa. We're talking with somebody in Morocco right now.
Oh, that's not whereabouts in Morocco.
And, to be honest with you, the guy I'm dealing with is all over. He's actually from Switzerland, and he works in Israel, and he's got interest in Morocco. And it's like, dude, we'll follow you. We'll show you how that
wherever
works.
you are.
Hemp works there too.
Yeah.
So anyway, hemp is bigger than just cannabis. It's about a better food. It's about healthier children. It's about better health and better soil. It's about a better social fabric. It's a big thing. It's going to take a while for this to fully develop, but I'm good with starting. And that's where we're at now. We're on the starting end of things.
Yeah, well, that's what I say to everybody. We're 2% into this game, if that. the sooner we work out that it's all one big plant and it can do lots of different things and it can help us think about lots of things in different ways, the better it is for humanity. So Ken, thank you very much for being
Yeah.
on the Koala podcast and just sharing your thoughts with us on these things, because what I liked about talking to you is let's just think about things, especially in the world that we live in today. Let's think about the next generations and be positive about things, and by doing that, that will happen. It's not, sometimes it doesn't feel that simple, but really that's what you've got to do to make change, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can only do so much. So do
Yeah.
what you can do, right?
Exactly
Don't
right.
worry about some of the things that are outside your control, but you can go to work and you can put your head down and do the best job you can, and that will bring change. That's the only way change has ever been.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you
anyway,
100%. Fantastic to speak to you, Ken. And I'm definitely,
yeah, Sean, thanks.
I'm gonna get you on again later in the year just to cheer me up if I'm feeling a bit miserable.
Yeah, hey, and if you put the show together in South Africa, let me know, because we go down there and maybe we can get together, or wherever you're giving your
Yeah, well, I mean, look,
talks.
I'm working with law schools around the world, because my thing is changing the conversation about regulation, law, legislation, thinking about this, and the sort of conversation that we've just had, which I want to sort of spread amongst the academic and professional class, and then feed that into policymakers. So then, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, policy at the moment is lobbyists, persuading people to write policy to generate capital. I've got no problem with capital, but it's not the be all and end all of life, and that's why, again, circular conversation, why we are where we are. So if it's really having people across the board saying this plant is a really good way of explaining in the 21st century how we can make change. I've always thought that from the beginning, when I first started this work, thinking about law and cannabis, is that it's a new industry, it's a new thing. We should think about it differently and use it to engender change. And I've seen over the last 10 years, a very 20th century American capitalism approach to cannabis that hasn't done it many favors, but I think there's enough people out there who also understand that and are running parallel, creating something new. And I think the new, as you said just before, will defeat the old.
I agree. That's a good thing to go to work with today, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Ken, thank you very much.
All right, brother. Keep doing what you do, and I look forward to seeing you down the road.